All right, so welcome everybody. This is Music Theory, and we're into I don't know what week this is, but we're into Unit 3. We're going to be focusing in on reading and writing music. Just a reminder that self-care is essential and continuing to work on your discipline and your regimentation, but also allowing that to include self-care. Because if you're not feeling good, there's really nothing else that's going to come out of any of this. And a reminder that whatever you're feeling or going through, you're not alone, and that's why you want to work with other people. Because if you feel that you're isolated and you feel bad, or you start to feel down or depressed, and you're by yourself, you don't know that everybody else is feeling that way, and it gets worse. So that's why it's really important to reach out and have a group of people around you so that you can verify you're not alone. I played some music at the beginning here. This first piece by Hungarian orchestra. Actually, it's by Bach. Whoops. And it has Bata drums from Colombia, which are originally from West Africa. They're named after actually the family, the father, the mother, and the baby. And so there's three different sized drums. And these drums basically create a rhythm and produce these big box, which is by Bach. And the second piece I played was by Snarky Puppy, which is a group that frankly is very innovative, and I can't get the thing to play. Here we go. And like I said before, every generation had innovators in all genres, rock, metal, classical, whatever. And the biggest thing is for you guys to try to listen as much as you possibly can, past the boundaries and the barriers that might have been imposed or you might have learned when you were in high school, because they really have no benefit to you. But culturally, racially, preferences, anything, just try to get out and get around and see people as people. And of course, the more you practice this, the better you get at it. All right, this last week, we should have tried to begin the process of doing the basic assignments on note identification. You might want to go, if this is your first time doing note identification, a good website to go to is musictheory.net. Musictheory.net has opportunities to go ahead and just like, it'll put one note up at a time, and then it'll ask you to identify what the note is. So it's really a fascinating kind or let's say a simple way to just kind of spend 10 or 15 or 20 minutes and get lost in the note identification. It's not necessarily the best way, because again, we want to do notes in streams or in lines, and you want to do it with a metronome because that's the way we actually read music. But if you're just starting out, it's a nice way just to get used to where a G is or an A is or whatever, and do one note at a time. All right, next thing is remember that for all these things that we're doing, basically from here on out till the end of the semester, drilling sessions are the most important thing if you want to get this to autopilot. So drilling pitch recognition, drilling pitch location, drilling rhythm recognition, and then eventually doing keys and scales and chords and intervals. These drill sessions are the most important thing. That's why we stressed developing regimentation and a regimen at the beginning of the class. If you have one, and even if it's only 10 or 15 minutes, but you do it 3 or 4 times a week, in no time, all these skills will go to long-term memory. If you want to be a musician, either part-time or full-time, these skills have to be quickly accessible because music happens in time. Unlike a painting or a sculpture that happens in space, you can take as long as you want to paint a painting or to do a sculpture or to view a painting or sculpture, because it's still there in space. As long as you're willing to stand there and look at it, it's going to be there for you. Music doesn't work that way. It happens in time. So like all languages, I may know French and I may know German, but if I can't access French and German fast enough for a French and German person to be able to stay there and listen to me, there's not going to be much dialogue going on. They're going to walk away like, American, what's the matter with you? Eh? And that's not cool. All right, so yeah, that's the basic idea here. You guys get the idea. So now reading music, just a reminder, do your assignments first. Try to do them by the due date. Don't beat yourself up if you don't do it by the due date, because there's always another due date. Wink, wink, like the next week we'll still take it. After a week after we get past the unit, I prefer not to have to go back and grade. But I'm going to honestly tell you, I still do. So, I mean, I shouldn't say that because I'm like setting myself up, but try to just keep working on it. All right, get the assignments done by the due date. and they're not that hard. Okay, they're really actually not that hard. And remember, you can do each of the assignments 3 times. How about that? So, and the more times you do it, the more repetition you get. So it's all good. All right, drilling, the more you repeat, the better. And again, for tracks 2 and 3, there's no point in just doing the assignments because we're only introducing the content. So if you want to get the content so that you can actually use it, you have to begin the process of drilling. I do want to say for most of us, we learn to drill this stuff in our normal downtime. So the way I actually got good at this stuff is I made little study sheets. Now you just put it on your phone and put a phone of a bunch of pitches, put a PDF or something like that of all the pitches that you did on MuseScore, put it on your phone, and then every time you go someplace, like before I start the car, I'm going to do, 2 lines of pitches, okay? And then start the metronome, which is on your phone, and then do 2 lines of pitches, and then start your car and drive off, okay? Every time there's a commercial for a favorite show that you have, I mean, do you really need to watch, another McDonald's commercial or something like that? No, just put it on mute, get out your phone, do a line or two of pitches when the commercial ends and it comes back to, I don't know, whatever you're watching, then go back to it. Okay, so this is the way we basically just build this into our life because it's about the repetition, and you have tons of downtime during an average day. You can just use some of that downtime to drill it and just kind of make that be a habit. All right, that's pretty much it. Remember, do everything with a metronome because you want to force your brain to do things in time because that's the way music actually works. And so it's not just about doing it. Again, it's not a painting. It's not going to stay there and wait for you forever. The drummer's going to count to 4 or the orchestral conductor is going to count to 4 and they want you to like play in time, all right? So we have to be able to solve these problems in real time. All right, next week I'll get into writing music a little bit. This is, again, just one of those things where if you're in track 1, you can just kind of like listen to it. And if you don't want to engage it, that's perfectly fine. But for those of us that are into tracks 2 and 3, writing music is the best way to be able to discipline reading music and getting kind of this foundation because they help each other. They're like brothers and sisters, loving brothers and sisters. So yeah, what was I going to even say? Yeah, writing music is cool, and it's a great way to learn theory. We'll get to that next week. All right, I think that's it for this. Let's go ahead and move forward. Forward. All right, so today's our humanities lesson. Yay! We're going to go to India. Woohoo! So this is you get 3 credits humanities for this class, so pay attention. In 20 minutes, we'll do all of the world's music. So we're going to go to India, but here's the cool thing. In the past, we would focus on like artifacts from other cultures, and we just talk about the artifacts like it's still foreign to us because we're talking about it on their terms and we're just giving you information, and then we test you on the information, like, how many notes are there in an Indian raga? And like, why do I care about that if I'm going into nursing or engineering, or even if I'm going into music, but I'm going to play in a rock band or a jazz band or something like this? And the answer is you don't. But there's qualities from these other cultures, skill sets and mindsets that can be really helpful to our lives. And that's kind of the basis for being able to learn this stuff. So I'm going to play what I think is probably one of the most complex styles of music potentially on the planet. In my estimation, it's the most complex style of music I've run into. It's called Indian Rag. This is Indian classical music, and this is from the Hindustani region, from the northern part of India. So it's a mixture of kind of Arab and Middle Eastern music and Indian music. And basically what you're going to hear in this music are what we call ragas, which are a type of scale that has an ascending and a descending form, meaning when I'm playing one melody going up, I have one form. I'm playing the melody coming down, I have another form. This is the only scale we have like this. Our scales used to be like that in the West, and then we just simplified them and simplified them. We have one scale that's called the melodic minor scale, but nobody actually uses it. So I'm not even going to teach it to you. And that's the way this would be. But here's the cool thing. It's like jazz. This is improvisatory music. So they've got this really complex scale. It's microtonal, which means every time you play a rag, you have to change your frets on the thing. So it's like Pablo hands me his guitar, and I change the frets on it every time we play a piece. Okay, and then I hand it back to you. Okay, so that's bloody difficult. Okay, for every pitch we have, they have 2. And so each of the rags are going to be a completely different formulation. And again, they're improvising. They have an ascending and a descending, and it's all based on kind of spirituality of Hinduism. So everything has a story, emotions, and colors that you have to put into the music. And in order to learn all this, they start at 4 or 5 years old, and they give themselves basically over to their guru or their teacher, and they discipline themselves so that they can become free channels through which there is no ego, there is no self, that they have the discipline down so well that there is no sense of attachment to what they do. And I'm going to come back to this because if any of you have anxiety for speaking, for performing, for tests, taking tests, or anything like this, this is your antidote. In other words, everywhere in the world, there are basically medicines for whatever it is that we are bothered by. You just have to get out there and find them. All right, so let's go ahead and play this. You might enjoy this.
Indian music has a continuous tradition that can be traced back 3,000 to 4,000 years. It is highly developed and extremely sophisticated music and has recently become very popular in Europe and the United States. There are two main types of music in India: the Carnatic music from the south and Hindustani music from the north. It is believed that the music of the south is closer to the ancient traditions, while the music of the north has been more influenced by the Muslim tradition. When a drummer learns his instrument, he uses syllables to represent each drum stroke.
Ta, tum, ki.
So these are syllables that are required to learn the way I'm asking you to learn the pitches and the rhythms before you actually get to play it. You have to discipline yourself on the basic vocabulary until it becomes automatic. If I can say the rhythms, I can play them. And the same thing goes with if you can say the pitches and say the rhythms for us, you can play them. If you can't, you can't. All right. And so there's a lot of work that goes into even before you touch the drum.
Ta, dim, arachapu.
The syllables are combined into patterns, and when the drummer learns them, these patterns are played out on the drum.
Kitataka, kitataka tangidu, kitataka tangidu, tikutaka tarigidu.
You'll be tested on this next one, all right?
Kitatum, kitatum, tatum, kitatum, tatum, kitatum, takitatum, tadikitatum, takitatum, tadikitatum, takitatum, tadikitatum ta.
Could you spell that for us?
The tambura is an instrument found both in North and South India. Although the tambura has 4 strings, it plays only 2 notes, the tonic and the dominant, over and over. In Western music, the music you are used to hearing, almost everything is composed and written out on paper. Indian music is mostly improvised. That is, it is made up as it goes along. However, in a given piece, each musician must stay within certain limits, such as the raga or scale and the tala or underlying rhythmic framework. Now, let's become acquainted with some of the music of North India. The Northern Indian musicians will play the sitar, the tabla, 2 single-headed drums, 1 for each hand, and the tambura, an instrument we are already familiar with.
what'd you think? So, what's really incredible about this music is not only the incredible discipline it takes to play it, but the fact that they're actually improvising on the fly. And did you hear that boom, don, 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 don? That's a little like lick that they have to honor when they hit a particular note when they're improvising on the fly. Organizing their 4/4, which is a 16 beat pattern. We have a 4 beat pattern. Their 4/4 is 16 called tintal. And then they can reorganize it on the fly. So it can be 8 and 8, it could be 4/4/4 and 4, it could be 4/4/8. And they do this on the fly while they're playing one set of notes when they go up and another set of notes going down and honoring Ganesh and completely free of ego. And I'm just saying, is like, so two things about that. Number one, don't feel bad compared to 7 notes that we have in our system and the fact that they're all equidistant and they're going to repeat over and over. Our theory is pretty bloody simple compared to this. But B, we can learn a lot about discipline and we can learn a lot about detachment. Now let me talk a little bit about detachment here because I think that's the next thing. Whoops, come on. Okay, there we go. All right, so overcoming performance anxiety in any sense. How many of you get anxious when you have to speak for some, in front of people, or you have to perform in front of people or whatever? Raise your hand if you get anxious. You guys that have your cameras turned off, can you please turn your cameras on or do something? Because I can't see you. I don't know. I mean, unless you're like completely like, I don't know, whatever. Yeah, turn your cameras on. Okay, good. So so most of us raised our hand. A lot of us raised our hand. So performance anxiety is really you focusing on the wrong thing in a sense. When we focus on what other people think of us, whether we're going to get the job, whether we're going to get the A, whether we're going to get a really good score on SAT because we want to get into the best college or this or that, we're focusing on something that is external to us over which we have no control. India people are extremely good at learning how not to do that. And if you look at the diagram on the right, it's called the rasa. They basically believe that all of creation, everything that you will ever do in your life already exists in the world. Whether you believe in a God or source of creation or whatever, bottom line is the lyrics for, yesterday were out before the Beatles wrote it. It was already out there floating somewhere. And so your job is to master the technique of your whatever it is you do, math or music or whatever, and to master the technique by paying the most amount of attention to your teachers, do everything that they ask of you, become completely, try to master whatever it is, give yourself over to the process of learning. And then by virtue of that, you're able to go ahead and let go of any attachment to self. In other words, if I write a song, it's not my song. I'm just the channel through which the song came. If I go to perform, I'm not performing for me, and I'm not concerned whether you like me or whether you think I'm good. I'm performing to give a gift to you. And if I do that, I no longer am concerned. I don't have any anxiety. I'm free. Detachment is the antidote to anxiety. So if, as an example, I go to a job interview, and basically the 3 stages that they do. For one thing, they practice their butts off. So if you didn't study for a math exam and you're anxious about your math exam, you probably should be. It's like study for the sucker. So it's the same thing with us. If you didn't prepare for your interview, then you're probably going to be nervous when you go for it. But if you prepare for your interview, and by the way, for musicians, this means I prepare for the gig. Like, how many of you, when you took your SATs, had to do it at like 8 or 9 in the morning? I know mine was, MCAT, GRE. How many of you studied every day at 8 in the morning for a week or 2 beforehand? You did. Good for you. Well, okay, hardly anybody else did, all right? Well, it's the same principle. If I have a 5 in the morning recording session for because that's when studio time very often is cheaper or whatever, somebody will book you at 5 in the morning. If that studio session really matters to me, I'll get up at 5 in the morning for a week in advance, or maybe 2 weeks in advance, and practice at 5 in the morning, because I am not necessarily predisposed to being at my best at 5 in the morning, all right? And so the same thing goes on, is if you're going to study for an exam or you have an interview or something, what time is that interview? What day of the week is it? And you start preparing for it. And Indian people will do that. I worked with a guy called Trilak Gurtu. He was an Indian jazz percussionist, world fusion percussionist. And this dude would literally get up in the morning and he would do his yoga and he'd practice. He would get to the venue like 3 hours early and set up all his drums. We'd come like an hour before the gig and he'd already be set up and he'd be sitting there like in perfect position, already tweaked everything. Everything was ready. He was perfectly prepared because he put all himself into that. And then the next thing we develop is kind of an assessment and a balance process. So let's say you go and you take that exam at 8 in the morning. How good is your mind? Are you at that 4 in the afternoon, or 2 in the afternoon, or 8 o'clock at night space where you're at your best? If not, what can you do? And so musicians and performers develop antidotes for every single imbalance: physical imbalance, emotional imbalance, mental imbalance, equipment, venue. What if there's feedback? How do I handle that? And we develop antidotes for that so that we can perform our best. I know exactly what to do when I'm emotionally kind of like not there, but I still have to perform like I am. All right. And then the last thing they do is they say prayers, literally to Ganesh, for detachment, that they can be this, what they call a hollow reed from which the pith of self is blown. I love that. It's like, get my ego the hell out of the way, because as long as it's about me, I am always going to be prone to anxiety. Now, saying this and doing it are not the same thing. So I'll just tell you, if you want to overcome performance anxiety, you actually have to practice this stuff. And I started doing this, probably I was in my early 30s and I'm 60 now. So, I'm saying right now I'm pretty good at this now. When I go to perform, I put a lot of energy into the pre-performance mindset so that when I go, I'm completely free of concern for whatever else happens around me or for whether the audience likes me, because I know I can't do my best if that's the case, if my mind is on the wrong thing. All right, so anyway, that's what you were seeing. These people, that was the hardest music probably on the planet. And did you see that drummer? He was like having so much fun. And I'm like, man, I'd be pissed if I had to work that hard. It's like, because the tala is different and they're, they're reordering things and there's just so much structure. There's so much going on there. And he's just completely free. All right, so that was our humanities lesson for the day. Yo-ho! You just got 3 credits for that. I got a little comment from here. I'm gonna read this from Faye. Studies have shown that dreaming is principally a process through which we reset our daily memory. Basically, the brain has limited daily storage for experiences, and once that starts to fill up, you quickly decline in ability to retain new information and to recall stored memory. The best time to study test is shortly after you've been sleeping. Take enough time to wake up, though, when you have reset your memory retention. Oh, I like that. I didn't know that. That's cool. All right, good. So yeah, y'all should be studying like right now. So all right, that's good. Yeah, the more we know about learning, the better learners we become. So that's good. Thank you, Faye. I appreciate that. All right, so let's talk about notes because that's so much fun. All right, so just a reminder. The process for learning pitches is pretty simple. You just have to identify pitches, do the basic assignments first, then do the treble and bass clef recognition. If this is your first time doing this, feel free to go to musictheory.net. And then when you get to musictheory.net, it has activities that you can go ahead and find. There's pitch activities, rhythm identification activities, and there's ear training activities, so you can go ahead and kind of pick what you need. Right now, obviously, it's pitch identification. We do on the clef, treble and bass clef, then leisure lines above and below, then try to say the pitches with a metronome. So you can practice that. We're going to do a little bit of that today. And then you would identify the location of the pitches, primarily focusing in on the octave Cs. So the basically 4 octaves will pretty much get us through 90% of music. There are obviously piccolos and there are contrabass instruments and things like this that go below or above that. But most of what you'll be doing for the vast majority of the instruments that we play can all be done within 4 octaves. So it's not like this is going to take forever. And then once we do that, then we begin the process of doing the same thing with the rhythm, identifying the rhythm. And of course, once you've got all that down, all you have to do is put them all together with a metronome, and that's called reading music. And again, the degree to which you put the time in the regimentation and the repetition of pitch recognition, pitch location, rhythm recognition, you can now put them together and slow everything way, way down and begin the process of putting them together and just kind of trust your hands the way we started learning to type in the keyboard when we were like in, I don't know, when do they do it now, first grade or second grade or something like this. They made you focus on, you know, not looking down at the keyboard and trying to go ahead and learn to memorize the location of the keys. And of course, now most of us can do that like, you know, like it's breathing. You know, the another analogy is, how many of you guys remember, some of you might remember, I don't remember, it was so long ago, but remember when you started driving the car? Okay. Remember the first time you got in and it was like, you know, mirror, and you'd be like adjusting the mirror, and then a seatbelt. Oh, I didn't do the seatbelt first. And you'd be like, ah, and then turn the car on. But do I put the brake on first? I don't know. And now it's just like zap, 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 zap. And the next thing you know, you're in Flint. You're just like, how did I get here? You know, and it's, you know, that's it. Go ahead, Reed.
Actually, my first concern of driving was getting the right speed down and looking at all my mirrors without taking too long.
Right.
So I would look at 10 seconds or more at my driver's side mirror and
Yeah.
then look at my rear view, then the passenger side, and it'd be like a minute before I look back at the road. But now it's like 3 seconds. Boom,
Yeah,
boom,
yeah.
boom,
No, it's
boom,
exactly that.
boom.
Everything, yeah, that's it. Everything is so conscious initially. So like you were saying,
Yep.
it's like, look at my rear view mirror. And the next thing you know, it's like you're over the center line because you've been looking at the
Exactly.
rear view mirror.
Exactly.
And it's like you can't study the rear view mirror. You just have to glance at it, you know. All right, well, so that's the way all this works, because driving happens in time, so does music. Okay, so in order for you to get this so that it's quick, it just has to be repetitious. And it really doesn't take much more than 10 or 15 minutes a day. If you do it 4 or 5 times a week, and then you do this for 3 or 4 or 5 weeks, in no time you'll have it down. It'll be automatic. But the hard part is getting to that 15 minutes, making sure that that gets in there. That's why I say, do your best to put it on your phone, you know, play games. Some people use flashcards and stuff like that. I can't do flashcards because I'm like all thumbs. I'm the kind of person, I'm in a grocery store, it takes me 15 minutes to put apples in a plastic bag. You know, it's like, I don't have that finger dexterity. So everybody has to kind of like learn their own way of learning. And of course, that's what we're trying to get you guys to do anyway. All right. So anyway, enough of that. So the ledger lines, you know, then you have to work on the ledger lines. We've talked about that. That's just simply a matter of getting comfortable with identifying this. Remember, we talked about, for our purposes, we want to go down to the E below in the treble clef below. That's this, basically this E in bass clef. That's the low E string of the guitar, up to this E above. That pretty much covers everybody. For the bass, I would say up to the G above the treble clef, or that's going into the treble clef, which is like this line in the treble clef. Okay, so we're basically ledger lines extend the staff up into the next stave. So if I'm a bass player or any bass clef instrument, now I'm playing into the treble clef, but I can do it in the bass clef. I don't have to learn 2 clefs. All right, we've got to learn 2 clefs, and then go down at least to this B down here, because that's the low 5-string. Most bass players now are doing 5-string basses, or a lot of bass players are. So that's the low string for the 5th string. Okay. All right, next. I mentioned MuseScore, so MuseScore is definitely the thing to do. There are a lot of shortcuts. So, you know, just as an example, if you put in shortcuts for MuseScore, there's all kinds of ones. I didn't even know they existed, and a couple of you guys in another class actually told me about them. So cool. And I would do on the stave first. I would do like maybe 2 or 3 lines of this on the stave. Then I would do ledger lines above and below, and I would do 2 or 3 like lines of these, and then I'd mix them all together. And then we do our octave Cs, and this should be a C, by the way. I don't know why I put a B here. It actually was a C, and then when I changed it. So this would be the second line here. So this C, this C, this C, this C and this C are the same. So this is middle C in the bass clef. This is middle C in the treble clef. Then this C and this C. So we have a total of 4 octaves. 1, 2, 3, 4. If you can get these C's recognition on the keyboard, and you know exactly where they're located, then basically all these other pitches are going to be in between the octaves. So I say, okay, this is an F. I know it's an F. I did that identification. Where is it? Well, middle C is here. And this is the C above, and this is the F in between. And all the F's look the same, all the G's look the same, all the C's look the same, all the everythings look the same. They just keep repeating in the different format. The piano is a very nice kind of system to be able to learn this. So once I spend the time identifying the location of the pitches, it becomes fairly automatic now for me to be able to play the pitches. And so I come over here, I would set a metronome, and I would go ahead and initially just put pitches down in random. They don't have to sound good, okay? 1, 2, 3, 4. Like that, okay? And so that's literally how we practice the identification of pitches and the location of pitches. It doesn't take long. Again, 10 minutes, 15 minutes a day, 3 or 4 times a week before it goes to long-term memory. Once it's long-term memory, you're pretty much good to go. All right, next thing you'd want to start to do is, this is in our next unit, but we're going to recognize the location of sharps and flats. This is the order that sharps and flats occur in our key signatures. So when we get into keys, you're going to want to memorize this. So start putting these sharps and flats up on your notes too, okay? So this is the order of sharps, F, C, G, D, A, E, B. That means every key that has an F sharp, every key that has sharps is going to have an F sharp. Second most common is F and C. So you want to do F and C and G and D in the order of most common. B is the least common. Okay, and the same thing goes with flats, which is just the opposite. Sharps are F, C, G, D, A, E, B. Flats are the opposite, B, E, A, D, G, C, F, just the opposite. Okay. And so that's the order of flats in keys. We'll get to this later on, but there's no reason for you not to go ahead and put sharps and flats up on some of your notes, and it's really easy to do on MuseScore. You put the note in, and then you go up and click on the sharp or the flat. Okay, and then it just adds it to the note. All right? All right, so make your own study sheet. The real point of all this is, so a lot of people, or not a lot of people, a couple people asked, I gave instructions in the assignment for last week to go ahead and start playing around with MuseScore and start creating a study sheet. And then people were like, well, where do we put it? And what do we got? You know, where's the grade and whatever? Remember, I'm asking you to do this for you, and I'm asking you to do this based on your own needs. And so there isn't one size fits all for this. Each of you have different abilities and different needs and different goals. So if, as an example, I've been playing clarinet for, 10 years or something like this, my treble clef is down. I don't even need to do treble clef. I just do the assignments to go ahead and get the grade in the grade book. So I have something to go ahead and that's uniform basically for everybody, even though you're in different tracks. And then I would go ahead and focus on bass clef. Like, I'm not even going to make a treble clef version for me, okay? I'm going to make my own study sheet, and I'm going to focus exclusively on bass clef. All right. If you're going to go on into music, you'd have to also do tenor clef and alto clef. So if you're in track 3, there's some tenor clef and alto clef because that's used for cello and viola. And so if you do orchestra, they're kind of like 2 of the main components of the orchestra. So you have to be up on that stuff too. Okay. If you're not going into university, there'd be no need to do that. All right, let's pause for a second because I think we've pretty much gotten to the point where we've heard as much of me that we want to hear. I've already long outgrown this. I don't want to hear any more me. So, comments, thoughts? Comments, thoughts?
No comments or thoughts on this end.
Okay, good. Anybody have comments or thoughts? Ideas about how to learn this? Ideas about how to regiment it? How about motivation?
Stay hydrated.
What's that?
Drinking lots of water might help. Because I know a lot of people my age, we drink a lot of Monster or a lot of caffeine or stuff like that, but maybe water might help too.
Okay, that's good. The brain needs water. Okay, good. Somebody else? Anybody have a handle on how to regiment this? Anybody practicing this yet?
I've made the bass clef and like the notes, like with their letters next to them, my phone background. So whenever I have like a couple minutes, I just try to like figure out where everything is. Because my treble clef is fine. It's just my bass clef. I do not.
Yeah, good. And do you have a metronome app on your phone too?
Yes, I do.
Okay, good. So that's perfect. Set the metronome app.
I also made a MuseScore study sheet. Good. But you just said make it, so I didn't like turn it in or anything.
Yeah, no, I mean you can turn it in. So if you turn in anything, remember any assignment you can do, you can turn it in on the discussion board at the end of the unit. Okay, so we're on unit 3. So anything you do that's over and above, it could also be a practice log. So a lot of us that can already read music are just going to be practicing on getting better at reading music or practicing on transcribing music. Maybe we can't see some of the stuff you're practicing, so you could also do a log of your practice and then you could post that log. So as an example, Tori, if you're drilling this bass clef and you do it 10 or 15 minutes a day or a half an hour 3 times a week or 4 times a week, you can keep a log of that and then post that on your discussion board. And then I can also kind of like look at it, and if there's any comments I could give, like if as an example, if you did it once on Monday and then once on Friday, I might say, can you work one in on Wednesday because the brain will love you, you know? And if I see that, then I can make those comments. If not, I just, pat you on the back and give you points, right? Because
Okay. Yeah, I've done like the practice logs before. I just didn't know we were like supposed to turn them in. Can people like
again,
see it? Is like a discussion board people can see?
yeah, so it is a discussion board people can see, and I'd rather people see it because if you're doing it and you're keeping and you're starting to regimen in, then people get to see what you're doing and they could potentially model a program off that. Remember, a learning community, basically, we have to learn from each other. Okay, so if you're able to solve the problem of discipline or procrastination or
Okay.
overcoming depression or anything, and I see that you've solved it, help me solve it.
I mean, I practice like fairly regularly.
Okay.
I just don't. I make more of like a mental note of it because like I saw like the structure you gave and now I like know that structure. So I guess
Yeah.
I just need to write it down.
So that's fine. So I want to repeat, you don't have to write it down and you don't have to post it. Tori, in your case, all of your assignments are coming out really good. You guys that are doing the work, you're going to get A's in this class because I'm not going to slap your hands and say that's not regimented enough. That would be really dumb. Okay, I'm trying to get you guys to learn for yourselves and to learn differently and to become more creative and more innovative in the way you look at your own learning. I'm not going to slap your hand and say you're not good enough. Okay. Now, if you're not overcoming procrastination or you're not trying something different and you're not getting the work done, then we have to keep working on that because that's probably not going to work for you long term. Okay. I
Okay.
mean, that is not the pathway to achieving your goals and your dreams and your capacities.
I'm like super, super meticulous and like I plan everything.
Oh, that's
So
great. That's
I
great.
think
Yeah,
I'm
that's great. So I would say, Tori, some of that would be helpful if you did, scan it or take a picture of it and post it because I think it might give an idea to someone else who might be in need of that meticulousness. Is that a word?
maybe,
Meticulosity?
maybe.
Okay, all right, good. So anyway, yeah. All right, good. Anybody else? Comment, thought, concern? Okay, so you understand pitches are not, there's nothing I can do for that except maybe just show you again how to do the basic focus here. So let's go back to our little musescore.org and let's set up a metronome. Whoops, I gotta set the metronome up first. Okay, so screen sharing has stopped on the shared window is closed. I don't want you to stop screen sharing. Okay, so I guess I'm gonna have to do it another way here. So let's go up here, let's go there. And can you see my screen, guys, yet? Can you see this? Okay, can you see that? Yes, no? Okay, all right, so let me see if I can just make this a little bit smaller there and blow this up. There we go. All right, good. So I'm going to set a metronome. You're going to have to keep it on mute because obviously it'll come over and it'll be distorted. So there's nothing I can do about that. Let me just move this out, blow it up just a tiny bit more. All right, so most of you are going to want to start fairly slow. I will tell you if you're starting something, like you're starting a new piece of music, or you're starting to read a piece of music, or it's a really difficult rhythm, you might set the beat slow and then let that be the 8th note, as in you'll have 2 beats per note. Right now I'm going to try it on 1 beat per note, so that's my tempo. All right, can you guys hear this? Yes? Okay, good. All right, so here we go. We're going to do 1 note at a time. Here we go. 1, 2, ready, go. F, B, E, C, B flat, F sharp, C sharp, D, C, D, E, B, G, C, D, E, C, 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 F, A, D, A, C, B, D, D, A, E, B, F, G, E, E, B. Okay, wasn't that exciting? All right, metronome, come back here. I got to turn you off. All right, thank you. Yes, you're very fascinating. Okay, so let's just see, how did we do on that? So how many were able to get all the way through on that? Raise your hand. All the way through with me? Good. How many of you were able to lock onto the time? Could you hear if you were locked onto the time I was? Okay, you'll probably see initially you're not locked onto the time, and that is we're not used to practicing with a metronome and getting our time, so when we hit the pitch, when the metronome hits, we're saying the name of the note. Okay, and so good time means you actually have to practice that way. If even a good musician should be exhausted after doing about 2 or 3 lines of this. Because if you're really working on your time and you're trying to really get yourself to lock onto those pitches, it becomes difficult, okay? But that's how you practice good time. Good time means I'm able to sustain my energy for the duration of whatever time is needed in any musical task, okay? Whether I'm feeling good or not. Okay, so that's what we have to practice. All right, good. Now let's do bass clef. Here we go. 2, ready, go. F, B, E, C, D flat, F sharp, C sharp, G, C, D, E, C, F sharp, G, E, B, B, C, C, eh. Okay, that was good. All right, how many were able to get all the way through on that? Okay, got a couple hands, not many of us, so that would be an indication, and that's how you want to test yourself, is whatever you were not able to do, that needs to go into your study sheet, and if it's everything, okay, no problem. Remember, if you go into a French class or you go into another class, the person sitting next to you is brought up by French people, okay, and they're going, fwa, 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 and you're going, je veux un petit peu plus, and you're cool. I mean, it's like nobody expects you to know something you haven't done before. Okay, so don't evaluate yourself by this standardized plateau that we learn to do in K through 12 and all of our exams. Oh, the person next to me is getting an A in math and I'm getting a C. Oh, I must be bad at math. No, you're just probably starting at a different place. And unfortunately, they have standardized exams and none of that actually matches human potential. So they should have taught us to brush it off and be okay with that, but they didn't. They made it like stigmatize us, you know. And so now we have to get out of that because it's really not about that. If any of you discipline this, you will get good at it, okay? All right, now let's go to rhythm. So I'm done with pitches. I got nothing more to say on pitches. I wish I did, but there's really nothing else I can say because you either do it or you don't do it, and if you do it, you'll get it, and if you don't, you won't, and it's that simple, yeah. So just a reminder, the octave Cs, you can identify that we have names for them. You know, C1, C2, C3, C4, you'll explode if you do that. No, just kidding. And basically, you can learn this if you want. I don't know really why. Just learn this C, this C, this C, this C, and this C, and you're good to go. When we get up here or we get down here, we do what we call octave higher or 2 octaves higher or 2 octaves lower, octave lower or 2 octaves lower, which is another designation. In other words, nobody actually writes these notes because nobody can actually play them. Okay, so when people are writing these notes on the piano, which are way up here, way up on the top of the piano or way down on the piano, we don't actually write those pitches. We actually write the pitches here, and then we'll say play an octave lower, or we write the pitches here, and we say play an octave or 2 octaves higher. Just FYI. All right, so don't even bother with those. All right, next thing's rhythm. So the primary focus on rhythm is on, oops, let me just make this a little smaller, is on 4/4 because we have basically 5 kinds of notes and a very simple type of rhythm. So you want to master this first. We have basically common time or simple time and complex time or complex rhythm. The complex rhythms are not going to use this math. They're going to have a different math. So when we get to those, we'll work with that. But common time or simple time, everything is based on the quarter note being the beat. So this is basically what we call the time signature. The top number is the number of beats per measure, and the bottom number in this particular case is what kind of note is getting the beat. The time signature, people have told us that that's the way it works. It actually does not work that way in complex meters. So when we get to those, I'll explain that that the math is different and this time signature means something different. All right, but for right now, for 4/4, 3/4, and 2/4, all of the rhythms, all of the meters that have 4 underneath, this is the math we use. Okay, so a whole note looks like this, a whole rest looks like this. You have to be able to recognize them in order to be able to do them in time. A half note looks like this, a half rest looks like this, a quarter note looks like this, a quarter rest looks like this. You have to work on developing your own system for doing a quarter rest, okay? Those can be pretty ugly, when you do them by hand. Eighth note looks like this, an eighth rest looks like this, a 16th note looks like this, 16th note. Usually we group eighth notes in groups, or we group 16th notes in groups, or we group 8th and 16th notes, and we'll see what that looks like. So the basic math hierarchy is really simple. In a measure of 4/4, we have one whole note. That means we can have 2 half notes, okay? And they're each worth 2 beats. This is worth 4 beats. Quarter note is worth 1 beat itself, so that's kind of our industry standard for the beat. When we say it is a beat, it's a pulse, and so I'm basically clapping the quarter note. Eighth note is 2 eighth notes per beat, so we say that 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and say that with me. Ready? Go. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and when you practice rhythm, you practice doing really precise and exact subdivisions so that you again are practicing good time. It's not the same to say 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and that's irregular rhythm, irregular subdivision. I'm not putting enough energy into it. Okay, so the thing is if you study and you really put your energy into studying, you get to study less time in order to get maximum retention. Everybody has had the experience of studying for an hour, getting to the end of the hour and not having any recollection of what you were doing because your mind was just not in it. Well, the same thing goes when you practice. If you practice putting all your energy into something, you get to practice less to get more results. Okay? All right, and then the 16th notes, we go 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a. Let's get our little handy dandy metronome going. Let's move it up just a little bit. And let's practice this. Here we go. Ready? Go. 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a. And I will literally, if I'm working on my instrument, I'm working on guitar or piano, or I'm working on a drum or something, I will do those for long periods of time, practicing with the rhythm, not to get ahead, not to get behind, not to rush, not to drag, but be able to go ahead and lock my body rhythms and everything that I'm doing up to the metronome. So that's how I'm going to practice rhythm. Okay. In your assignments, you're going to have to be able to write the syllables underneath the rhythm so I can see that manually you can do it. That's because that's all Blackboard gave us initially when we designed the course. But when you get to the discussion board, I urge you to read the rhythms with a metronome, record yourself, and then upload the recording to the discussion board so I can actually hear you say the rhythm. Okay. All right, so let's do some rhythms. So the way this would be written is I would have 1, and then I'd put in parentheses 2, 3, and 4, indicating don't say it, but hold this note. Then this is a rest. I'd have parentheses for 1, 2, 3, and 4, meaning I don't say the note at all. Okay, so everything in parentheses is either a sustained note or it's a rest. And then the numbers indicate what you would actually say. And this is how we basically notate. So here I'd have 1, I'd have 2 in parentheses, 3, I'd have 4 in parentheses. I should redo this so that I have this done this way so you guys can see it. It's not confusing. 1 and 2 would be in parentheses, 3 I say, and then 4 I don't say. All right, let's do this line. All right, here we go. 1, 2, ready, go. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 3, 3. Okay, now that's really simple and makes us sound really kind of stupid, but that's the way it works. Okay, All right, now as music gets more complex, you have to slow the tempo down and you have to work harder. And I will tell you that it's not just where the note starts, but where it releases. And you're going to see very quickly as we actually get into music that what we write and what we do are not the same. Okay, so bad news. All right. It's like silent letters in English. All right, people that learn English that come from another country, they're like, "What is with you people and your silent letters?" You know, in German, every letter is pronounced, and then you get to English, and it's like, "What is with these silent letters?" And we're just used to it. You know, like Pahoni. You know, everybody knows Pahoni is phone. You know, we don't say the P. PH is an F, and the E we don't say, and we just know this. And yeah, it's weird. So we do the same thing in musical math. Musical math has a lot of silent letters, things that we do differently than what you see. All right, let's do this line here. Okay, so let's set our little handy dandy metronome. By the way, I'm assuming you guys can hear this and you can see it, right? Yes? Okay. All right, good. So 2, ready, here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, off. 2, 3, 4, 1 E and I'm sorry, I'm sorry. I was switching to get my thing off. Let me start again. All right. I had something covering up the notation. Ready, go. 1, 2, 3, 4, off. 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 2 and 3 and 4, off. 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 2 and 3 and okay, so this would have parentheses, this would have parentheses, and this would have parentheses. That's the only thing that's wrong with the way this was notated. Okay, so I must have gotten this from an earlier thing that I did and didn't ever change it. So yeah, that's bad. All right, now let's do 16th notes. Let's try this. So some of you are ready for this. Some of us are not yet ready. This is the first time we're doing this. This is going to be 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a E and a 2 E and a So here we go. E and a 2 E and 3 and a 4 E N. Now I'm going to isolate this bad boy and I'm going to do it over and over. Let's do this. Ready? Go. E and a 2 E N and a 4 E N. E and a 2 E N 3 and a 4 E N. E and a 2 E N 3 and a 4 E N. E and a 2 E N 3 and a 4 E N. And as stupid as you might feel doing this, that's just how this works. Okay, you take something that is difficult, you take something that you're kind of like really struggling with, then you slow it down, you isolate it, and you repeat the heck out of it. Okay, and then you put it back into the context of the whole thing. All right, let's do the whole thing. The bottom line. 2, ready, go. 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a E and a 2 E and 3 and a 4 again. 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a E and a 2 E and 3 and a 4 E and. Good. How many got it all the way through? Good. How many understand what we're doing? Okay, raise your hand. I need to see the hands because I can't tell if you understand what we're doing. Okay, raise your hand. Madison, Maddie, okay. All right, Joey, do you understand? Okay, good. Yeah. So a hand here or there, shake, thumb. Okay, good. All right. So yeah, so that's basically all it is. Now, obviously, in order to get to the point where we can do all the different rhythms, point is I could put all the combinations of rhythm. A mathematician could tell me if I have 5 different notes and I have a total of 4 beats, how many combinations of rhythm there really are. But in truth, there really aren't that many. And so you can run all the possible rhythms in a relatively short period of time. Okay, the problem is we do them in real time, and we're going to have different combinations for different pieces. And so we have to do this fairly regularly to get to the point where when we see a piece of music, we can pretty much immediately start playing it, adding the pitches to the thing and finding the location on our instrument. And then we just simply scan for any rhythm we haven't seen for a while and figure out that rhythm, sounding it out just the way we did. And that's the way musicians basically master reading music. And then, of course, if I can read this music, I can also write it because, like, they go together. All right. All right, so this is not entirely fun, I know, but let's go ahead and do one more. Now, so here's an example of what we're talking about. We've got a little thing here. We basically covered almost everything that we have in music. We have 5 notes that we use most of the time. We do have a 6th note that we occasionally use, a 32nd note, but honestly, that's theory 5 and not theory 1. Then we use ties and dots. I'll get into dots next week, but ties are tying the value of one note to the next. So this second note is tied to the value of this. This is so that we can have notes that sustain over the bar lines or that are able to go ahead and be in places and spaces we don't actually have notes for. Okay, so where do I count? Where do I cut this note off on? This one here, this second note. Anybody know? End of the first ending. Where do I cut it off on? So it's a whole
Is it
note.
4 beats?
Yeah, it's 4 beats, so technically I would cut it off on the next one. But I can't. Why? Because if I repeat over here, this has a note on beat 1. I can't cut this off on 1 and play this on 1. So I actually cut this off on beat 4. That means this is actually a dotted half note, not a whole note. That's the way I play it. So I'm going to go 1, 3, 1, 2, 3, off. 1. Okay, so this is a silent letter in rhythm. All right, it says whole note, but I'm not playing a whole note. I'm playing a dotted half note, which is a 3-beat note. We'll cover dots next week. Okay, and that means I have to have a beat rest, which allows me then to get back over here and play this on beat 1. All right? All right, let's try this. 2, ready, go. 1, 3, 1, 3, 1, 2, 3, off. 1, 3, 4, 1, 3, 1, 2, 3, off. 1. Yeah, you guys get the idea, all right? And this is like the simplest of simple rhythms, but you'll actually see to lock it onto a beat and then to make sure you cut things off directly where they're supposed to cut off if you want to have good time. If Pablo comes in, he knows this, okay? So he comes in and he cuts this right off on 3. But I don't pay attention to where this cuts off. So I say 1, 2, 3. Okay, that's good enough. And I just drop it off somewhere between 1 and 2. What happens in the mix is you hear one person who ends really early and then another person holds it off and we say it's not tight. Like you can't fix that in the mix. All right. And so, yeah, nobody is going to like our recording. They're going to hear that I cut off before Pablo cuts off and we just sound like we're not organized. Okay. It's not tight what we say. Okay. All right, so that's how all this works. Let's just do one that's a little more complex in case anybody's feeling bored. So let's go ahead and do the top line here. And then we'll do the top line here. All right. Notice, pay attention to this little tie here. This is going to be 1 and 2 and. Okay. 1 and 2 and I hold the and over for beats 3 and 4. Okay. All right, here we go. 2, ready, go. 1, 2 and 3, 4, 1 and 2, 3, off. 1, 2 and 3, 4, 1, off. 1, 2 and 3, 4, 1 and 2 and off. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, off. Now notice that these notes here, I actually turned into dotted quarter notes and I was off on the end of 4. That's how precise I had to be able to get this to be able to happen right down on beat 1. Okay, so these are little tricks that we have to learn in terms of actually playing it. Initially, you can just be okay with ballparking it and being okay with getting the rhythm more or less there. Those of you guys that want to be more professional, you have to then eventually work not only on where the note starts, but where the note releases. Okay. All right, now you probably can't do this if you don't know anything about dotted eighth notes or dotted eighth notes are basically 3/16 worth. So this is like 1 E and I come out on So 1 E and 2 and 3 E and 4. 1 2 and 3 4. 1 E and 2 and 3 off. 1 2 and 3 and 4. 1 E and 2 and 3 off. All right, let's try it together with a metronome. 2, ready, go. 1 2 and 3 4. 1 E and 2 and 3 off. 1 2 and 3 and 4. 1 E and 2 and 3 again. 1 2 and 3 4. 1 E and 2 and 3 off. 1 2 and 3 and 4. 1 E and 2 and 3. Okay, good. Let's see who's with us. Metronome, please be quiet. Okay, so let's stop the screen share. Let's just check in with everybody. Half of us are about ready to like, oh, please make this end. Okay, this is how we drill it. All right, just let you know. I mean, if like I could make this somehow like more fun and whatever, I would do it. I'm sure somebody has figured out a way to tell jokes while they're doing this or something. I just don't know any. So, but this is how you have to do it. And remember that doing the rhythm and doing the rhythm accurately are not the same. So being like, I am my own machine, I am my own drummer on everything, is the difference between having good time and practicing that way. So simple rhythms, I practice with all the energy, like this, like I'm gonna do this in front of 10,000 people and my entire career matters. If I practice that way, if I think like that matters, okay, then it begins to matter. Like if you study for your math exam or you study for your exams, like this is the most important thing, and you're putting all your energy in, you're not sitting there with your feet up and you're eating Doritos and you got like music in the background and you're checking your phone and this and that, you're gonna have to study so much longer that way. Okay, and so musicians, we have to practice. Same with athletes. Athletes that practice, like when they're practicing their free throws, like it's the end of the fourth quarter. There's 10 seconds left. If I make this free throw, I can win the NBA championship. I'm LeBron James, and I'm practicing and like trying to get my form perfect. I practice that way. Then when I actually get into that situation, I've already done this. I've run that through. My brain is ready for this. Okay, so. It's another reason why, by the way, we practice with other people, because if I'm practicing by myself, I'm not as likely to practice that way until that becomes my mindset. It's like it's really good to practice with someone else because we can call each other on our scheiße. We can, like when we're not doing stuff correctly, we can like, hey, dude, let's really, we both said we wanted to do this. Let's go ahead and step it up, okay? And that helps. Okay, anybody have any thoughts? I'm going to check the chat room, so we have some chats in here. Yeah, I wish English were phonetically consistent. Oh God, everybody in the world does. Piano people are set. Yeah, that's true. Piano people have an advantage in terms of learning music, but just to let you know, just like singers can become lethargic about picking stuff up by ear because they can go ahead and pick stuff up by ear because somebody sitting next to them is singing the right pitches, and they can actually believe that they're singing correctly because they're learning by somebody next to them. It's an advantage on one hand, it's a disadvantage on another. Well, the same thing goes with pianists. When pianists have to communicate with people that don't have like the little keyboard settings and everything in front of them, it sometimes is hard for them to communicate. They sometimes can think they know the keys and they really don't. Like as an example, I can have motor dexterity on my scales and not know the scales. Okay, I was the fastest trombone playing scale player in the world. Okay, and then I had to actually transpose from key to key, and I realized my head did not know the keys. All right, so I can play these scales, and I think I know the scales, but then you say, okay, what are the notes in the key of D major? 1, 2, ready, go. D. D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, D. Why would I need to know that? Because I'm going to have to transpose from key to key. Madison walks in and says, oh, I don't want to do this in the key of A today. I want to do it in the key of D. 1, 2, 3, 4. I have to take all the notes that I see in front of me that are in the key of A major and move them to the key of D major, which means I have to know the notes of the keys. Like what are they actually? Because I'm going to take this, I'm still going to say this is the fifth note of this key. What's the fifth note of D major? And in one beat I have to do that, or in 4 beats I have to do that. Okay, and so that's why we actually have to do this drilling stuff. But again, our vocabulary is so simple that it doesn't take long to get at this. It just takes that 15 minutes a day, 4 times a week. It just takes that. Okay, and then you'll replace, like pitches are going to be hard at first for some of us, and then rhythms are going to be hard at first, and then we'll have them, and then eventually we'll replace that regimen with some other regimen, like keys and scales. Okay, so when you have your regimen and you're really drilling and you're drilling with all your energy, that 15 minutes, I'm going to exhaust myself. At the end of that 15 minutes, I want to make sure that I have nothing left in the tank. That means I'm getting everything out of that 15 minutes. And if I do that 4 or 5 times a week, my brain is going to be on autopilot in 2 or 3 weeks. Now I take that skill out of my regimen and I replace it with a new skill, and then I get that skill down. Okay? All right. So what do we got here? Tori says, I'm playing my flute. Gotcha. Okay, ledger lines are a little hard past D for me because oboe is my primary instrument. Yeah, so again, oh, that wasn't meant for the group. Well, it is now. So, okay. So, well, yeah. Oh well. So, but the point is actually again, the way Tori has to practice is going to be different than Anastasia or Tristan or Reed or Pablo or Kaylee. It's going to each one of us have to kind of like do our own thing and be okay and be really focused on learning to do that for us. In other words, again, if you're doing it for your teacher and your bloody scores and things like this, we're just not in the mindset yet where we're learning for the rest of our life to go ahead and build our skills up so we have our best life. And again, most of us are not going to end up doing music full time or as a profession, but if we learn how to discipline this kind of regimentation and this kind of practice, we can apply it to anything. Okay. All right. So I don't have much else that I can do. Yeah, that's it for today. So let's go ahead and see if anybody has any thoughts, concerns, problems, challenges, yeah, whatever. Any thoughts, ideas? Anybody struggling with motivation to do this? Because that's the first thing. Remember, motivation precedes everything else. So if I'm struggling with the motivation to spend that 10 or 15 minutes every day drilling this stuff, or even to get the assignments done, that's the place I need to start. Like, don't be talking about, oh, I just have to work harder. No, we have to be motivated to work harder. We have to be motivated to spend 15 minutes a day doing this. So is anybody struggling with motivation and or have a solution for motivation? Reed, motivation?
I don't necessarily have an issue with getting the stuff done. I'm just not motivated much anymore.
Yeah.
It's just hard for me to get out of bed sometimes.
Yeah. So first off, you're not alone. I would say probably 80%, maybe even higher of us right now, if we were to be completely honest, are feeling pretty much the same way. We're in a global pandemic with one of the most polarized political and cultural dimension I've ever seen in my life. I've never seen anything like this. Although it always existed kind of underneath the surface, it was always there. It just now it's out. And on top of that, we're all doing things online, and there's no real certainty as to what the future is going to hold. Anybody want to get out of bed for that? I mean, does that like, oh, this is beautiful. This is just the way I thought life should be. So just so you know, Reed, like it's like this is it. This is the way it is. Now, as I said before, though, there's a couple of things that we can do differently. One is hang out with other people so that when we say this, they say, yeah, me too. And that means we're not quite so alone. It's like it's not quite as painful when Reed says, "Oh, I hate. Sometimes I just have trouble getting out of bed," and I say, "Yeah, me too." All of a sudden, it's like, "Oh yeah." So, and then we can just talk about, okay, so how do you get out of bed? And so I get out of bed by making sure that I have something that's in front of me that feels somewhat exciting and somewhat interesting. Like I'm working on a book now on global culture competency and whatever, and it usually makes me want to get out of bed because it's kind of a cool thing. And there's some like artsy craftsy stuff in it and whatever. And so and I get out of bed for you guys because like I see all your smiling faces and your creativity and things like this, and that's something to get out of bed for. Like I'm in a cool place because I have you guys. Now if I were like working in an office pod or something like that, I don't know if that would do it. I'm just not an office pod guy. All right. So part of that might also be, we have to look at some things now. If you don't have anything exciting, that's a reason to go back to that schedule you had. And maybe you have work like 6 days a week and you're working at Walmart and you're stacking shelves of like oodles and noodles or something like this. That might not necessarily be what you thought your life was going to be. It's like I might not be able to continue to stock oodles and noodles for another 10 years and feel like it's great to get out of bed. I might have to look for another job. I might have to look for another way of doing my life that is more motivating to me. And that's why we do those schedules and we do our time inventories and we look at our goals and we look at ourselves and kind of be honest with this. And we continue this process. Okay. So, and dialoguing is really helpful. All right. Anybody have any other thoughts, ideas, or comments? So that's a make it end look. Okay, good. All right, so cool. I appreciate it. Anybody wants to stick around afterwards, please do so. I'm now going to end the recording.